What's up, storytellers? I'm C.R. Rowanson, the magic engineer, and it's time to talk about magic. You ready? I hope you are, because this is a video I've been wanting to talk about for a really long time now. Because in this video, we're going to be talking about the structure of Allomancy in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. And I've been wanting to do this for so long. Oh my god, this is going to be great. I want to be clear up front, though. This is not going to be an in-depth analysis of Allomancy. We aren't going to be looking at the types of magic or any of the variables you would find on the magic system blueprint. We're not going to be diving into the limitations or the various ways that it's used throughout the story. No, what we're looking at here is the structure, that underlying formula that Brandon built the entire rest of the magic system off of. And then after we identify the structure, we're going to talk about why it's cool and why you might want to use it. And finally, we'll close this video off by applying the structure to a brand new magic system. There are several key elements that make up the Allomancy magic system structure, and we're going to go through those one at a time, starting with the major categories of magical effects. One of the things that I find cool about Allomancy and all of the metallic arts is how Brandon broke it all down into several large categories. First, you have physical effects. These are any of the magic effects that alter the magic user's physical abilities or senses and have a direct impact on physical matter. Then there are the mental effects that allow mental manipulation of people's emotions, or even the mental ability to sense or cloak the use of magic. Next, there are the enhancement effects that allow a magic user to either enhance or neutralize the magical abilities of either themselves or another magic user. Last are temporal effects that alter the flow of time or can provide information from either the past or the future. The next element of the structure is the two opposing action verbs. These are one of the things that make Allomancy stand out, especially when it first came out on the scene, and Brandon Sanderson uses the terms push and pull to describe different types of magical effects. Now, in some cases, the push and pull is very literal, like with steel and iron, where it allows the magic user to push metal directly away or pull it directly towards them. In other cases, like with copper and bronze, it's a bit more of a metaphorical push and pull, but he keeps the parallels there throughout the entire structure. Then you have the two position words. In the case of Allomancy, they are internal and external. Now, when you combine these three elements of the structure, you end up with this 4x4 grid, which allows us to have up to 16 powers right away. And we can see pairings and we can see parallels, and it automatically makes things more comprehensible and easier to follow, which is just part of the reason this is so awesome. Another thing that makes Allomancy unique, and you can argue whether this is part of the structure or not, but I think it's worth including, and this is a distinct performance verb, or performance action. In the case of Allomancy, magic users consume the metals and then burn them within themselves to fuel the magic. So you have a bunch of words related to that, so burn and flare, and they're very distinctive from what I had seen against most other magic systems, which helped it stand out a bit. Now that we have this grid of 16 boxes and we know what category it falls under, whether it's supposed to be pushing or pulling, internal and external, it's just a matter of filling them in. And part of the power of Allomancy is each of them is incredibly distinct. There's not much overlap between the two. They're connected, but no two metals really produce the same thing. And to a certain extent, no two metals can even really imitate the other. There's a little bit where they can, but for the most part, it is very clear which metal is being burned and which effect is being produced based on what's happening. If you aren't familiar with Allomancy and you want a little bit of an overview about the rest of the system, I really recommend that you check out the Allomancy overview video by Daniel Green. I really enjoy it. It's quite simple. He covers the basics of the system as well as the basics of the other two magic systems in the story. And that's the underlying structure of Allomancy, and we can now use that for our own magic systems. But why would you want to do that? And okay, you know. All right, Seamus, that's a good boy. Now that I have a dog in my lap, if you're enjoying this video as much as I am enjoying recording it with this snuggly little pupper, then please like or subscribe. It really does help a lot. So why would we want to use this structure for our own magic system? Well, for one, it's awesome, and if you use it, there are going to be some instinctive, deep-seated parallels that people are going to draw between your system and Allomancy, which can always be a good thing. It's also amazing for rational magic systems. So if you're wanting to build a rational magic system, using a structure like this is fantastic. For one, it puts things in an easy to understand order, and it invites exploration and extrapolation. If people know what the patterns are and they know the basics of the structure, but they only know a handful of the magical effects, they're gonna want to brainstorm and think about what might be in the rest of those boxes, which is a fantastic way to engage your audience and pull them into your story and the magic system. Now, I mentioned there will be connections to Allomancy, and there will be, because people who see this grid are probably going to make a connection. That doesn't mean that we're building a cheap copy of Allomancy. Not at all. We still have plenty of room to make the system our own and unique, as we'll see a little later, because creativity is in combination and distinction is in the details. And we, even after filling out this grid, have tons of room for details. Last, I just find a structure like this easier to work with. I find an empty grid far less intimidating and overwhelming than a blank page. I don't know about you, but that's something that helps me. It's already there. The structure's in place. I just have to fill in the blanks. And that can be a lifesaver. So now let's take all of that and use it to build a new magic system. This is going to be fun. Before I do anything with a magic system, I always need a seed crystal. The seed crystal is the point of inspiration, the origin, and the core concept of your magic system. Without it, I find that I and a lot of other people tend to get stuck or in a rut or aren't really able to get the creative juices flowing. So we're going to start with the seed crystal, which, this is a fun one. The seed crystal for this magic system is utility fog. If you aren't familiar with utility fog, that is a science fiction term for nanites, like clouds of nanites that can be linked together into basically any kind of structure. For this magic system, I want to focus on utility fog that creates tools and automatons, so autonomous creatures and robots that roam around this spaceship that I have in my head as the setting. So there you go, that's the seed crystal. All right, well, following the Allomancy structure, the first thing we need are the major categories. So for this system, I have chosen to go with utility, communications, combat, and mobility. Now, those are going to cover a variety of different things, which we'll see as we get into it a little bit more, but that doesn't have to be all the system is. That's another great thing about this structure, is it's really easy to add on. If I thought of a fifth category, or a sixth, or a seventh, all I would need to do is create another little 4x4 section and fill in the blanks, and bam, magic system expanded. The next thing we need are the action verbs. For this magic system, I'm going with bind and rend, which has to do with the fusing and linking together of the nanites or the separation of them, whether that's going to be a metaphorical binding and rending or a very literal binding and rending is going to depend on which magical effects we're talking about, but those are the action verbs. As for the positional words, these aren't quite the same positional words that we see in Allomancy, which is totally fine, but we have tools and we have the ability to work with the nanites on a very individual, personal level that the magic user can interact with them, or there's the automatons. So the two words I'm going with here are personal and autonomous. What's that? Is that the mailman? Is that the mailman? Is that illegal? That's crimes. More people walking by, more crimes. It's terrible. I don't know exactly what I was saying before the mailman showed up and Seamus informed me that was crimes. It's still crimes. He's still growling. But it was something to do with the personal and autonomous magical effects. The autonomous and auto effects really going to have to do with the behavior of the autonomous structures. And personal is going to be more individualized, whether it's a tool for the user or the user is going to have very direct interaction with the nanites. That's what I'm going with there. Last, we have the distinctive performing action. Because we're dealing with utility fog and signals are going to be sent to the nanites in order to do stuff, I decided to go with broadcasting. So in Allomancy, it would always be Vin burned steel or Kelsier burned tin. In my story, if this did go into a book, it would be so-and-so broadcast rend or broadcast lock, assault, whatever. And I might come up with more magic-y or science-y names for the different symbols, create some actual symbols to go with them for people to reference. And that's how people would go about actually performing the magic, is broadcasting these commands. So we have the grid, we have the action verbs, we have the placement verbs, quote unquote. Let's start talking effects. Let's start with the utility effects, primarily looking at the personal row. In Allomancy, he kept it real simple. 2 of the effects were just push and pull, and I want to do something similar here. So the personal utility effects are just going to be bind and rend. This is where a magic user is broadcasting a command for the nanites to fuse or separate. Now, that could cause entire structures to fall apart. They could use this to lock an automaton in place, or maybe even just sculpt the cloud into a desired object. That's kind of why it's utility. On the automatic side, the commands I want to go with there for bind is actually going to be repair. So that's when somebody is broadcasting to a specific unit to repair or sustain something. And the rend effect would be to absorb. So they are going to deconstruct whatever this is and absorb the material into themselves. Then we have comms. For the personal binding effect, I wanted to go with link senses or like link into network, whether that's a helmet or goggles or just an innate cerebral implant that allows them to actually tap into the network of creatures or objects or sensors or whatever that they have claimed and placed around them, expanding their ability to see, hear, read, yada, yada, yada. For the personal rending effect, I went with jam sensors. So this would allow a magic user to try and jam the sensing and potentially the commands of other magic users in the area. The automatic comms effects were where my brain started going a little wild, because for the automatic binding effect, I chose claim, which allows a magic user to claim a portion of nanites, a cloud, or a structure as their own, tying them to themselves so that they can command them more readily, they are followed, they're more in sync. So yeah, basically I created nano monster Pokemon. And I have no problem with that. None at all. So the automatic rending effect for comms is going to be liberate, which, does the opposite. You try and break somebody's claim over a cluster of nanites, which would allow you to integrate it into your own items. It would free up the automaton for you to work with it instead of being commanded by them. It could do a whole bunch of interesting things. And now, combat. The personal binding effect for combat is just going to be to summon a suit of armor. I know that sounds simple, but we're talking about a sci-fi setting, and there's no reason that it has to be the same set of armor all the time. There could be a lot of variability, whether it's due to personality, the person's job, or even the role that they have to play in the combat. There could be room for flexibility. It doesn't have to be super rigid. Summoning armor is still distinct from any of the rest of the stuff we do, even if we allow a lot of flexibility and morphability in that effect. So, badass sci-fi armor made out of nanites. Yes! The personal rending effect is weapons. That's where you're going to use a nanite cluster to form a weapon, whether it is a dagger, a spike, a club, a gun, a pistol, whatever. That's what you're doing. And very similar to the armor, I see no reason to limit it to a very specific weapon. It can be flexible based on the situation or the knowledge of the user or any number of things. Okay, automatic effects. The automatic binding effect, I'm just going to put as guard. That's just where they are commanding an automaton to guard or protect a specific place or structure. And there will be nuances based on whether you have claimed it or not and what its previous programming was. You don't necessarily know what that means, but it's being bound to a place to protect it. Then the rending effect is assault. That could mean so much. It could mean the creature is just storming forward and ripping through doors and people and hulls and whatnot to get to its target. Or if it's just a ambulatory nanite cluster, well, that's the terrifying one because it may just float through the air and disassemble everything it passes over into its particulate matter. I already love this system. And that just leaves mobility, which I'm actually going to leave blank for now. We're going to circle back to that in just a minute. For now, you should be able to see how useful that structure is and how different the magic systems can be, even using the same underlying formula and structure. It doesn't just have to be a rinse repeat of Allomancy. We have options. I do want to note that at this point, we've mapped out a good chunk of the magic system. I mean, we have the structure, we have a whole bunch of magical effects listed out, have even more ideas about how they can be used and all that kind of stuff, but the magic system's not done. We haven't gone over limitations. We don't really know anything about the magic users. We haven't worked through the blueprint at all. There's still work to be done before this is a fully fleshed out and usable magic system, but we have a really good start, and that's the point. Now, if you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps so much. You guys have already been sharing and subscribing like crazy, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. So please keep it up. I'm really excited to see what we can do with this channel. Now, I can hear you screaming mentally, probably verbally, at me right now. What about mobility? It's empty. Yep, sure is. And I did that on purpose because for the comments in this video, I want to know what magical effects you would put in the mobility area. Or if you have ideas for a different category altogether and effects for that, like jot that down there. I want to see what you guys come up with because I have no doubt that you are every bit as creative as I am, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. And that's everything for this video, but if you don't want to wait around an entire month for my next video, I understand. It takes painfully long to do these things, but hey. But if you want to hear more about magic systems or just hear from me more in general, you should sign up for my mailing list. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. I talk about magic systems, games, productivity hacks, mental health, dealing with anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And I send those out every week. So please consider joining the mailing list. And that is all for now. Thank you so much for being here. Keep building and stay awesome.